better business, and a better life begin here. Welcome to Business is Art on TrueChat with author and business consultant, John Umstead.
Hey, thank you for tuning in to Business is Art today. We've got a somewhat of a recurring character on the show today. Sitting in the guest chair is Justin T. Weller. Justin, welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you, John.
Justin produces the show and is a co-founder of TrueChat. So occasionally, when I need somebody to sit in with me, he's there to at the ready. So again, thanks, Justin. Appreciate it. So today, we are going to talk about how to know if your startup is viable, or your product or your startup. And we're going to go through a series of questions that you really need to ask yourself and answer sufficiently to give you some clues about whether your startup or your product is actually viable. And this was actually delivered originally earlier in this calendar year as a webinar that we conducted. And a skinny down version of that webinar is available at my website. So if you go to plancanvas.net, that's plancanvas.net, and go to our resources page, you can find this webinar, How to Know If Your Startup is Viable, and take a listen to it there if you want to see the slides and presentation that went along with it. You're welcome to do so. But we're going to cover some of the highlights here.
Hey, I'm excited for this. This is a great question. Probably one of those things you should ask prior to beginning a business, but nonetheless, interesting if you've already started to see if you have correctly identified these.
Yeah. And, not to turn this into a commercial for my software Plan Canvas, but, that's one of the beauties of Plan Canvas or tools like it. You sit down and really try to think through what your business or your product is before you spend a lot of time and money, before you've really made a major investment, including in emotion, and weigh things out. So actually at our website, also on the resources page, we have a case study, an actual user of Plan Canvas that was looking at launching a business and went through some, not all of the motions of the planning process, used Plan Canvas to do it, ultimately concluded that, hey, this is not a good idea. It's not at least not right now. And so, in my mind, that is a beautiful case study, even though that business didn't launch. And I'm sure that user was disappointed and would have preferred to have launched a business. I'm sure she also would have preferred or did prefer to not spend all of that time, money, and emotion working towards the launch of something that wasn't going to fly.
Well, and I think that's, a lot of times we have this new idea and we approach the planning phase of it. And I'm actually going through this right now with a different business, and we're excited and we're ready to go. But it's important, I think, when you set out for these plans, right, to keep that open mindset of really trying to think critically about how to answer these questions so that when it's done, if the answers are, this isn't a good idea, that means it was worth doing, because it's a lot better than obviously you get 2 years into it or something, and then you look back and it's like, oh my gosh, if I had only done these plans ahead of time, if I had only thought through this, I would have never gone down this road.
Right.
And then you get in, and then you have to be in that whole mess of, well, I've already put so much into, so now do I try to make it work to get something back, or do I give up and just cut my losses?
Right.
So much better to avoid all that.
Much better.
Yeah.
And the trick about it is, so we'll share with the listeners some of these questions that you need to ask and answer. But the trick of it is to answer the questions as unemotionally as you can. Really be honest with yourself and answer these questions as such, or otherwise the exercise is futile, right? And that's hard sometimes because we've got an idea and we love our idea, right? And we think everybody else is going to love our idea, and we can't wait to get this thing out there and make a living out of it, make some money out of it, share it with others. And so we forget sometimes to take that deep breath and really critically look at things and take those emotions out of it and try to be as logical as possible when considering some of these things.
That's the hope. I mean, I know TrueChat, by many standards is still a startup, even though we've been doing it for a few years now. I don't know. We haven't defined that hard cutoff. I don't feel like where you're you're no longer a startup. But
well, I mean, I don't know that there is a pure definition, but just kind of a rule of thumb that I think about is, there's startup, but you're pre-revenue. Right. And so that could last a while because that is somewhat of a testing ground. You're proofing the business through that process. And then you get to a state of revenue. And I think a comfortable measure is 5 years. And I say 5 years because most startups, 80% of startups will make it that first year. Whether that's during that, pre-revenue proof period or whether it's, a revenue generating period, 80% are going to make it that first year. And then things start dropping off after that. And by year 5, half of all startups are gone. And then it kind of settles down after that. So I think anywhere in that, 1 to 5 year range, you can legitimately classify your business as a startup.
Sure. Still in that learning phase. So,
yeah.
So what questions are we looking at then?
Okay. So there's basically three categories of questions. There are questions about you yourself, you, the individual. There are questions that you need to ask and answer about your market. And there are questions that you need to ask and answer about your business model. So those are the three categories of questions that we're going to look at: you, your market, and your business model. All right, so let's start with you. Not you specifically, Justin, but you, the grander you out there. Not that you're not grand. But,
okay.
So we really begin with the question, what type of entrepreneur are you? And there are many, many types of entrepreneurs, but the 5 that highlight in this webinar are as follows. There is what I call a thrill seeker. So this is an entrepreneur whose primary purpose is to go public, get to that IPO, get rich overnight, maybe become one of those celebrity CEOs, that sort. So I call that the thrill seeker. There's another type called the lifestyle master. This is someone who has a passion for something or just doesn't want to work for someone else. All right. They want a certain lifestyle out of their business. There's also the mother of invention. Now, this is someone who perhaps they're unemployed or underemployed, and they just really have no choice. It's like, if I don't go into business for myself, I'm just not going to have an income. I'm up against the wall. So mother of invention is a type. There is a societal visionary. So this is an entrepreneur whose mission is really to help solve social ills or to create social opportunity. So it's all about making this world a better place. Social entrepreneurs. All right. Then another category is the spiritual entrepreneur. This is kind of relatively new concept, probably at least recognized as such. I'm sure it has gone on forever, as long as there's been spirituality. But it's only, at least in my observation, it's only fairly recently been recognized as a specific type of entrepreneur. So this is someone who, or an entrepreneur, who goes into business as a means to express, promote, or celebrate their spirituality, either through the business itself or through the products and services that it provides, or they found a company based in spirituality. And I guess an example of this would be probably Chick-fil-A is probably an example, right? They aren't. It's not that they're serving chicken because that makes the consumer of chicken a more spiritual person, right? But the founders of Chick-fil-A are deeply spiritual. You can agree or disagree with their thoughts and beliefs, but they wanted to have a company that reflected their own values, good, bad, or indifferent, right? So that is a type of spiritual entrepreneur or company. So I guess Hobby Lobby would be another one.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking through the list and thinking about, And I could see a couple. I don't know if, maybe it's difficult to pin. I'm sure for some people it's probably not. They can say this is like, to me, I think if you're the thrill seeker, right, that one comes a little bit more clear probably to some people of my goal is to take an idea and make it a big success. That's what I'm after. It's really not so much
I'm here to line the pockets
and
feed the bank account and get out.
Exactly. If it's a good idea I can make money off of, that's what matters. And that's okay. I mean, right? We obviously
nothing wrong with it.
Gotta have people like that, especially for maybe if you're one of those other kinds of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And your company's at that stage where it needs to be taken to the next level. Maybe as the founder, if you had a different purpose, you're not really the person best situated anyway to provide that insight to do it. So,
right.
Do you feel like you identify with one more than the other?
Well, I was going to ask you the same question. And before either of us answer, I would like to make one clarification on the spiritual entrepreneur. I gave a couple of examples that were based in Christianity, the Christian faith. But spiritual isn't limited to any type of religion. So as an example, someone may start a yoga business, right? And that's very much based in spirituality, different kind of spirituality. But so spirituality can take on many, many different definitions. It is not necessarily limited. Well, it is not limited to religion. So anyway.
So you want to go first or you want me to?
Well, I was going to ask you, but you asked me. So, I guess it's only fair that I be in the hot seat. So I will say that I'm a bit more of the lifestyle master, passion for something. It's not that I don't want to work for someone else. I've worked for someone else most of my adult career. And you could argue that as a consultant, I'm working for someone else all the time, right?
That's what your business is.
That's right.
True.
That's right.
That's a good point.
But I have a deep-seated passion for wanting to help people do better. I want to focus on their success. So I would say that is my type.
Yeah. I mean, without taking your definition, and changing it too much, I think I see it also fitting in the respect of part of the way that some people are best situated to help is by having some more flexibility in how they choose to help, which is easier, obviously, if it's your own company as opposed to being inside somebody else's. Because I'm sure there's lots of people out there who work for somebody else who are passionate about what they do, but maybe their personality is better situated to be directed, perhaps more so than some other people who are better at doing the directing, which makes sense. I was looking at the lifestyle master, but I think it's probably the societal visionary. Despite what TrueChat does on a technical standpoint, and I like tech a lot, you have to. I mean, to be in the business that we're in, since a big part of what we do is help clients do what we're doing right now, which is the tech part. I like tech, but I don't know if it's fair to say that that I think tech is the answer to make things better. I don't think that's the motivation behind why I'm doing TrueChat. I think our mission of having those open, honest, and respectful conversations is really what it's about.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to suggest. Is just that you just turn right straight to your mission statement. TrueChat's mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. That certainly fits very well with the societal visionary. Yeah.
Yeah. Then it does cross a little bit into that lifestyle master too, because obviously I have a passion for doing that. But it's also part of what TrueChat is, we do get clients who what their passion is not something necessarily that we're passionate about, but our passion is similar to kind of in your capacity as a consultant, help enabling them to better share that or be better at their passion, whatever that is.
Yeah.
In very different ways, but yeah.
Yeah. And we can maintain components of each of these types. It's not that we're exclusively one and none of the others. I simultaneously, so I'll give you my own example. So I feel like I relate best to the lifestyle, right? But this podcast, Business is Art, I very much consider part of my overall consulting practice, right? It's a component of the practice, but it is something that I get no monetary value from. In fact, it costs me money actually to do the podcast.
Sure.
You know, people ask me all the time, how much business has it generated for you? I'm like, well, none that I know of. You know, I don't track it that way because that's not why I'm doing it. Now, I started doing the podcast for an entirely different reason, and it probably would be more like the Thrill Seeker, right? I published the book, or the book was published. I didn't publish it myself, but it was published. And the notion of doing a podcast came up as a means to market that book. So that was very much about, hey, can I increase my book sales? And it very quickly morphed into something different and became kind of more of this thing where it fits more into the societal, social visionary, where really our purpose is just to educate people, share messages and share hints and help people to be a little more successful.
And connect. You've obviously got that component as well of, I think one of the great things about this program over our, 137 episodes now, which is quite a few. People, you know, you throw that number out there and you have to let it sink in for a minute. That's a lot of, it's a lot of doing. But also a lot of guests, and fascinating to, not only for the listeners, I'm sure, but for having produced a number of the episodes myself and just having been a listener to the other portion of them, I'm sure for you as a host, very educational, and having these people who work in such a diverse range of businesses, and how their lives and how all of that come together.
Right.
And that fits, I think, well, like you said, into the societal thing as well. It's educational, it's informative, and there's that connection component too. So
yeah.
And a few episodes, right? Maybe on the spiritual note too, of things that you care about personally, and that you can use this as a platform to communicate.
Yeah, or the guest very, very much based in some form of spirituality, and you know, this show has been a platform for people to share a little bit of that, you know, without turning into a big, huge commercial. So, yeah. So, I want to talk a little bit about why this is an important question to begin with. What type of entrepreneur are you? But first, I would like to ask our listeners to please get out there and join our discussion. You can find TrueChat on social media at TrueChat.org. Again, that's TrueChat.org. You can reach out to me directly on Twitter at John Umstead. That's Jon, no H, and get the H out of there. I don't know my name. So Jon Umstead, or find me on LinkedIn. Again, out at my website, plancanvas.net. I'm sure you can reach out to Justin as well. But,
yes. Feel free. TrueChat.org. Well, and you mentioned all the social media, so I guess I don't have to repeat that, but yeah.
Yeah. So get out there and talk to us. We want to hear from you. But why is it important to ask what type of entrepreneur you are? The really simple explanation, Justin, is that depending on which of these types you more heavily relate to, you're going to behave and act and plan and function differently. All right. If you are, I'll just give you a really simple example. If you are what I call the mother of invention, you need the money, you need the job, you can't find employment elsewhere. So you are very motivated to get money in the door as fast as humanly possible. All right. You're going to take any job you can. You're going to make as much money as you can as quickly as possible because you've got to pay the bills. All right. Versus the thrill seeker, you know, it is not uncommon for, especially in the tech world, you were talking about tech earlier, especially in the tech world, for a company to operate for years at a loss.
Yeah.
And all they're doing during that time is attempting to build up the value, the perceived value in the company, which oftentimes, oddly enough, has nothing to do with whether it's profitable or how much profit it makes.
Mm-hmm. I've always found that fascinating, and not fully understanding the concepts as well as maybe an economist, but having listened to a number of them, In fact, one of our other programs that has discussed in some ways how what the economy deems valuable is not always based purely on how much profit did it bring. There's a lot of obviously future potential there. So yeah, there's definitely you would think there's some key indicators there that would hopefully let people identify themselves. And I know we're going to get to some questions that you have to ask about yourself too at some point. But
yeah. But that's the big key. You got to know what type of entrepreneur you are, because you're going to plan, behave, execute entirely different. In some cases entirely differently, but definitely there are going to be variations on how you set those companies up and run them, depending on the type of entrepreneur you are. So it's a great place to start. Speaking of a great place to start, okay, now you know what type of entrepreneur you are. Another question to ask yourself is, why the heck are you here? Why are you doing this? And you need to really look at things from both a business and a personal perspective. You know, we talk all the time on Business is Art about how it's foundational. It's critical for your business to have a vision, to have a mission, and to have a purpose. But you should also have that for yourself in your personal life, you personally, the individual. And what you want to make sure of is that your business and personal vision, your business and personal mission, and your business and personal purpose are at least in harmony with one another, at least in not in conflict with one another. And I think we had a guest on, Charlotte Anderson, not too long ago, who said that she looks at them as being integrated. And I kind of like that point of view as well.
Yeah. Well, I think for most people, you would hope that they are somewhat similar, especially if you're going into business for yourself, obviously, then you have a lot more control over that. But at the same time, you got to make sure that what you're setting out to do, that before you start doing it, that there aren't those conflicts that maybe you could avoid if you had taken time to look at them. Right. Because again, at least from what I've seen and people I've talked to, those can be some of the biggest things that bring down an organization is, a not related to the business, but a personal issue that arises where it's like, oh, well, I didn't know that, it was going to ask me to do this, or that I would have to do that. And I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that. And it's like, well, you might be able to figure that out ahead of time if you label these things and you identify them.
Yep, absolutely. So why are you here? Why are you here? Speaking of why you're here, let's talk about TrueChat again for just a second. All of the podcasts on the TrueChat network pursue a common goal. We mentioned it before, but it bears repeating. TrueChat's mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. That's why we're here. So if you have any ethical concerns with today's episode, please email ethics@truechat.org. Again, that's ethics@truechat.org. And we're talking about how to know if your startup or product is viable. And to do that, we're suggesting that you ask and answer a series of questions. So we've already covered the first couple of big ones. What type of entrepreneur are you? And why are you here? So we're going to get into a few more questions. But again, we want you to join our discussion. Don't just leave it to us. Offer your thoughts and opinions. Go out, find us on Twitter at TrueChatORG, or social media at TrueChatORG. Reach out to me or to Justin personally, directly, and start a conversation with us if you would, please. So, continuing this conversation, the next big question to ask, broadly categorized as, how determined are you? And there are a whole bunch of sub questions that go along with that big question. How determined are you? All right. How determined are you?
Well, TrueChat started, and it's funny when people ask us, well, when did you start? Because it's kind of a loaded question, right? TrueChat, the name, and the the idea started about 7 years ago in 2011. As far as a business that was truly out to make money with, some real life semblance of a plan, probably only the last 2 or 3 years. But I think that with what we've gone through in those 7 years, at least with what I've seen, that if I wasn't driven, I'm either stupid or I would have or I would have given up before now. So it's either I'm driven or I'm an idiot. It's one of those
you're
two.
determined.
Right?
You just don't know any better.
Right. Just too dumb to know that I should give up. So, which is possible. I'm laughing, but I don't rule that out. Could be stubborn.
It could be just sheer stubbornness keeps you going, but sometimes that's also the path to success. So let's talk about a few sub questions to that broad category. How determined are you? So here are a few examples of questions that you should ask and answer to help you reach the conclusion of how determined are you. All right. One is, how much financial runway do you have? How much do you have in the bank, in the coffers, available to you that you can rely on for some period of time while you try to get this thing up off the ground. Right. Another question: how far into debt are you willing to go? So maybe you don't have the money readily handy. I don't know how that works. You don't have the money,
right? Yeah.
So you need to go into some form of debt to fund it. How far into debt are you willing to go? Another question: how many hours can you realistically spend on this business? All right, a lot of startup entrepreneurs have other jobs, at least for some period of time. They have to, because they're in a pre-revenue state and they've got to make money. They've got to make ends meet some way or another. So for a lot of those entrepreneurs, many hours of the day are already spent. They're already dedicated. So how many more hours in the day can you realistically spend on your business, whether you have a current job, need a current job or not? All right. Another is, how secure are your relationships? And tied to that is, how much do you care? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I have a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever. I know this is going to take me away from them, but that's okay. I'm not really into this relationship for a lifetime commitment.
Right.
Or, oh my gosh, no, I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize that relationship, because this stuff is hard on relationships. It destroys relationships, when it's not managed well.
I liked seeing this in there because as you were reading the other ones and I skipped ahead, I saw this one and it kind of went back to what I was saying before, that so often the many things that are wonderful about being human are also things that can be the downfall if you haven't thought about them ahead of time. And even if you have, but at least if you've thought about them, then you're not shocked when it happens.
Right.
But this is a big one, because you can be really passionate about your business, but how far, are you more passionate about it? Is it more important to you than those other things? And if it's not, then identifying where that line is can be really important,
right.
Making sure that you know what the limits are.
Yeah. And, there's this thing about entrepreneurs that it's inside, right? And no partner in a relationship with an entrepreneur is ever going to feel that burn as much inside as that entrepreneur does. They might outwardly support it, even inwardly support it, but it's not going to be as much of a burning desire to that other person as it is to the entrepreneur. And that's where there can be problems. So you've got to, it's incumbent on both or everyone that's in the relationship to understand that things are just going to be different for a while. And then you have to decide if the relationship can withstand that or not.
Yeah. It's like most things in relationships, it comes down a lot to communication, right?
Yeah.
And in good business, being successful comes down to making sure that you are effective at communicating your intentions, and listening. Yeah. Right. In return. So right. Communication goes both ways.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, another question that is under this broad category is, how likely are you to stick with it? And kind of back to your point, are you sticking with it because you're just stubborn and ignorant? Or are you sticking with it because you really just know that it's going to work. It might not work today, it might not work tomorrow, but by golly, this thing is going to work. I just know it is.
Yep. I like to think it's that one.
Yeah.
I sure hope it's that one.
Yeah.
We'll find out, right? You just keep going. And I don't know if is there that light bulb moment where you wake up one day and it's like, holy crap, it's working.
Yeah. I hope so. I think so.
Or it starts working and you just always feel that way and you don't ever really realize that, oh my gosh, it is actually working.
Well, I think maybe it's a little bit of both, actually. Yeah. If you think about whether they are actually an entrepreneur or someone with entrepreneurial leadership qualities, you're constantly thinking about how can I make this stuff better? And a danger you can get into is you forget to recognize how far you've come. You forget to celebrate the small victories as they are coming along until you sit back one day and look at where you started, look at where you are right now, and you realize, holy crap, this has been working all along. It's just been working in bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's something that definitely has been a learned thing through the course of TrueChat, at least for me. I think it still is very easy always to look at all the stuff that has to be done and, the lists that will never be complete and all of that.
Right.
And forget about what has been done, and to look back and make sure that you are taking time to appreciate, what you have accomplished.
Yeah.
Because everything takes longer than we think.
Yeah,
and so,
unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately, right? We all want it to be
except
done
getting
faster.
old.
Yeah. That comes faster.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, one more point on this one, then let's examine one more question that needs to be asked. And then, Justin, I think what we need to do is cover the rest of these in a part 2 of this podcast.
So people can we'll do this next question, but then after that, people can stay tuned.
Mm-hmm.
And in a few weeks here, probably you'll see that part 2 come up, and you can get the rest of it then.
Yeah. So before we do get to that next question, let's wrap this one up and back on the how likely are you to stick with it. This also goes back to the previous broad category question, why are you here? And our encouragement to have you take a deep, hard look at yourself, not just the business mission, vision, mission, and purpose, but your personal vision, mission, and purpose. Get to know yourself on a much greater level than you perhaps ever have before. And here's why it's important. Specifically to this question, how likely are you to stick with it? I've taken dozens of personality tests over the years, either because I've just wanted to, or it's been part of a training program or what have you. And I consistently come out as generally the type of the person that is hot out of the gate, right? I am eager to go. Let's do it, right?
Yes.
And then I run a couple laps. I'm like, screw this, man. Give me a beer. Yeah, right, right.
Yeah. Where's the boat and the beach and the beer?
So if I am not into something, just because of my personality type, there's a pretty high level or degree of chance that I'm going to just walk away from it because it's not feeding whatever it is that I need to be fed. So I had better really believe in something to know that I'm going to stick with it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I think and sometimes it's hard to put your finger on exactly what that feeding force is, but I think as you go, you get better at knowing when you feel it and when you don't, and hopefully cut the rope sooner rather than later when you know you're not feeling it. They're all building into each other here, right? So
exactly.
After we get through the whole, why are you here, and can you make it work? Then you got to get to, well, is there a place for the idea?
So actually, we were going to ask another question, but I believe this is a place that makes more sense to break because the next question gets into a new category of questions. So remember the first three categories or right at the open, we said there are three categories of questions. There's questions about you, yourself. There are questions about your market. And then there are questions about your business model. So those were the questions about you. Next up are questions about your market. So I think that's a good place to start or restart the discussion.
I agree. The is there a market and questions beyond that, like you said, focus a lot more on the more analytical business side of things as opposed to the more esoteric personal side of things.
Yeah.
So it's a good place.
All right. You can listen to TrueChat podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and anywhere fine podcasts are found. For Business is Art on TrueChat, I'm your host, John Umstead. Justin, thanks again for being with.
Always a pleasure.
All righty. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Business is Art. Be the change.